Okay, welcome to Cleveland Heights City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. It's April 21st, 2025 at 6 p.m. Addie, would you call the roll, please?
Cobb.
Here.
Kuda.
Here.
Petrus. Larson.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
Posh.
Here.
And we do have Petrus on Zoom.
All right, wonderful. So we will be using the 1 minute rule today. 1 minute, that's how long people speak. We are going to flip the agenda around to accommodate one of the people that's participating in the executive session. So do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I can do that.
Thank you.
I move that we go into executive session to consider the lease or sale of city-owned real property and to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance, as necessary to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project.
So moved. Second. Oh, you made the motion.
Second.
I'm sorry.
All right. Cobb.
Aye.
Kuda.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Russell. Aye. Posh.
Aye.
All right, we'll be right back as soon as this is over, maybe 20 minutes. All right, so we are back from executive session and we're gonna go to legislative review. Before we start that, so we got the 1 minute rule, everybody. What I'm concerned about is the stuff that's not on this agenda. We had talked with the law director on Thursday, Thursday before, about some council initiated legislation. I sent Director Hairston an email outlining maybe 5 or 6 council initiated budget adjustments, and we never heard anything back. Where are we on that stuff?
I think you heard something back from me, did you not?
Remind me.
Well, just that the way that legislation works is that council obviously is a legislative body. Each council member has the ability to introduce legislation according to our charter and code using a particular mechanism. Obviously, the council has chosen to impose, I guess, informal rules on itself for how council members are allowed to introduce legislation and the process it has to go through. But council members are independently elected legislative members of a body.
Yeah, this is a little off
Just let me
topic.
finish. It's
Okay.
So members of a body that are individually empowered to introduce both legislation and amendments to legislation. I think that I've expressed that on multiple occasions and in response to this conversation as well, that if you are looking for guidance about a particular amendment, I've asked the person who will be authoring the amendment to reach out to me and copy Director Hairston asking for guidance about a particular change if you want it from us. Otherwise, look at the budget, look at the funds that you would like to either increase or transfer, and draft an amendment.
So,
And then the requirement that any of the, and actually I believe it's a requirement on the expenditure of dollars, not necessarily the budgeting of dollars, but even if you were to take it as a requirement for the budgeting of dollars, that there be a fiscal officer certificate,
Right.
in order to allow something to pass. That is not for the introduction, that's for the passage.
right. So here's where we're at. We did discuss all of these items in committee of the whole. That gives, if there's no objections, that gives council the right, I suppose, if you will, to move the legislation to the law department. The law department has asked that they get from the finance department a sign off on, that there's enough, that it is indeed this fund, whatever the fund is, and that there's the fund has enough money in it. And then the law department is, the way I understand it, is you're ready to go if you get that information.
I mean, we don't generally generate that
ourselves. I guess that was my point.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the process that the mayor described, I wasn't involved in any of that, but if somebody gets the data to us and the numbers, we can put together a piece of legislation that will be very pretty.
Yeah, so my point is they deliver the form of the legislation. That's the law department's obligation. When it comes to the content of the legislation, that is the responsibility of the introducing sponsor of the legislation.
Okay, so you don't need to hear from the finance department. You just need us to put in that number.
We don't need to hear it directly from the finance department.
Right.
We need to hear it somewhere.
You need to
Okay.
hear it not before introduction. And what I've expressed is that we would prefer that if council, if you'd like to ask a question, I mean, obviously the budget information is on the website still, so
Yeah.
you can tell whether or not an increase will be higher than our expected ending balance in a particular fund. But if you'd like to introduce something, then the finance director and I can provide you with some information about whether or not there's money available to be budgeted
Well, that's what we asked in the email.
upon
Go ahead.
introduction.
Yeah.
Then we have something
Well,
concrete before us to
we-
respond to.
right, go ahead.
So in the finance committee meeting that you attended,
Yep.
you told us you and Director Harrison were going to work on a process for doing just what we're talking about. I have submitted my request for the composting program to Director Harrison with a CC to you. Are you saying that I should have had the legislation first in order to make that request?
So the legislation, if you're talking about increasing from a particular fund, or you're talking about increasing a particular fund, and you're saying that you are not sure which fund to use in order to add that 38,000?
I would use the unencumbered funds at this point, but that may not be what you want to do or Director Harrison wishes to do.
Well, I mean, from which fund?
General Fund 101.
General fund, you are certainly empowered to do that if you so choose. If you'd like a recommendation from us, we can give that. Obviously, there is a lot of money still sitting there, but as your colleagues have pointed out, there is some uncertainty in our environmental, our economic environment right now. And so we might have some concerns there from your colleagues, but from my perspective, if you wanted to add $38,000 into the general fund, you're certainly welcome to do that. Obviously, you guys are the budgetary authority, so you can make that choice. I don't know that there is necessarily even a better place to draw that 38,000 from. When it comes to the other ones, though, like what is it? You were looking for $4 million in streets, and Petrus was looking for $2 million in streets. I don't know which of you is going to win that argument, but either way, streets is a fund. You don't have to ask us which fund to increase. You know which fund it is. Beyond that, if you're talking about council's increase of 35,000, 10 for one thing, 25 for a discretionary fund, that's council is funded through the general fund. That's a simple increase in the general fund. I don't know exactly what more information other than sort of the official sign off from the finance department upon the introduction of a piece of legislation you would need.
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
So is the legislation ready to go in the law department?
I would just
The request has been made.
say that everybody who had a budget adjustment legislation should send that to Director Hannah
Okay.
with a number attached to it. And then I would like, and I'll copy Director Hairston. If you want to chime in and say, well, maybe it should come from here, or you have some recommendation other than what council member puts in there, fine with that. Go ahead.
So if I wanted to do an increase for lighting, what budget line item would that come from?
For lighting, just generally,
General,
like general,
street lighting,
Safety
an increase for street lighting, I would ask you to hold off on that until we go through this Leopardo Energy project where we are working with First Energy to do some changes to our street lighting.
All right, go ahead.
Do Addie have access to look at the, what was I just asked you?
New World accounts?
Huh?
New World?
Yes, New
No.
World accounts?
I do not.
I imagine not.
Can she have access or is she not allowed to have access?
I don't know that that makes a lot of sense, but I can discuss it. I'm not sure that that would make sense other than possibly giving them access to council's budget in the same way that we do department
Yeah, I could send
directors.
her the budget. I could send her an electronic copy of the budget.
Yeah.
I have ours.
Is there,
If you want,
No, because I was just saying, some of that stuff, we could probably sit with the council clerk and go through what line item or budget or whatever item that we could need to withdraw or add to, and then give it to you and to the director.
I think all of that information is presently on the website. It's still on the website. We haven't taken anything off of the website. All of that information is still there. Is there additional information that you're looking for that isn't contained in those documents?
well, I mean, all of the budgetary stuff you're talking about is not specific to account numbers. So for example, if we wanted to create the 2 new accounts that council was talking about creating
That would-
under 101, 1101, 101, which is our council's accounts, or council's fund, under the general fund, how would I go about knowing what accounts those are?
So what you would do is request that information from us. You would request a new account be made. Like you were talking about, I think this is what you were talking about with the
Yeah.
president, about the council internship program, the $10,000, and the desire to put it in its own specific account, which can be done, but that's a system issue. That's not a legislative or budgetary issue.
So we don't need that for
You
legislation.
do not.
I understand. All right, we gotta go through this,
Okay, I have one more question, please.
if it's quick.
It's gonna be quick. Director Harrison, can I, since you are talking about lighting, I've come across some lighting that I thought would be very helpful for the Noble and Taylor area, maybe some of the parks. They are called smart lights, where when people are walking, it's motion sensitive, and it lights up 4 blocks as they completely walk down streets or within parks or whatever. It's something new. A city of Cleveland is starting to do some of these. If I can send you the email and the video to it, would you mind looking at it?
I'd be delighted to.
With you as well, Mayor?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember,
That's what I
one thing I would point out though is City of Cleveland I believe is using CPP lighting fixtures, which they own.
Mhm.
For Cleveland Heights to do it, we would need CEI First Energy to sign off on that retrofit. And I don't believe they have anything like that in their tariff riders right now.
Okay. Well, I understood that the mayor was working with something with some new lighting, so maybe they can look into it.
The
And maybe,
LED retrofit is based on an experimental LED energy rider that the CEI has in effect right now. They don't have anything like that in effect. But that's not to say that there isn't some discussion to be had with
Okay.
CEI.
okay, and I think it was some funds set aside for some lost my words here. Was it a study or a survey or something for like street lighting? Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
consultant. Yeah, we had some money set aside for that as well. So, because we've been talking about safety and lighting in those 2 areas for a very long time.
All right, so these
But
are
I'll send it to you, I'll send it to you and the mayor
These are first readings for consideration of adoption.
and all of them.
Resolution 5625, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Sosek Painting and Remodeling. This is for lead-based, pavement of lead-based paint hazards. Any questions about that? Okay, 57-2025, resolution opposing federal and state cuts to food assistance programs. That's from Councilman Petrus. Yes.
I wanted to bring this up now just because it's actually pertinent to a conversation we've had in the past in terms of some of the federal cuts to CDBG programs. And I want to know if anyone's interested in expanding this to really talk about that impact, since it's impacting so many organizations here in the community as well, outside of our food banks.
Well, Councilman Petrus?
I think that this was responsive to cuts that we've already heard about. But I mean, I too am concerned about potential cuts to CDBG funds. And so I could imagine getting behind a separate piece of legislation.
All right, well, let's,
Because I don't think that anything has been cut. I know that they're in the news recently, in the city of Cleveland, Mayor Bibb encouraged organizations to pause their expenditures. But I'm not aware of any specific cuts that have already been made to CDBG funding.
Nothing yet, no, that's correct.
all right, thank you. 58-2025 is road salt for ODOT, from ODOT. 59 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with GDP. GP, what did I say? Oh, Great Point Average, I'm probably like, yeah. Yeah, right. So this is for the water line replacement on Altamont. Then 60-2025 is a resolution acknowledging the receipt of the Cedar Fairmont SID plan. Whenever there's, yeah. You know, one thing I'm concerned about is when they do a 5-year plan, maybe the law director knows this. When they do a 5-year plan, what if like something new gets built and they want to bring them in and they're in the middle of a 5-year SID plan? You know, like, are they like restricted for 5 years with these are the properties and that's it? Can you amend things?
So the last Cedar Fairmount SID plan was for 3 years.
Right.
And at the outset of that, there were questions related to the proposed assessment that had to do with the expansion of the district at that point in time. So you can't expand the district mid-term.
Okay, I didn't think so, but, you know, 5 years, I mean, a lot could happen in 5 years.
For what it's worth, that's the first expansion that I'm aware of. It was relatively recent, so maybe
Yeah.
that means it's less likely.
Well, they're not worried about it, why should I? 61-2025 resolution authorizing the mayor to execute contract with Citizen Serve. Contract extension, sorry. All right, then first readings. I was gonna refer both of these to planning and development, which meets on Wednesday at 10:30. 62-2025 are the 16 real estate purchase agreements, and 63 is the South Overlook Road, 0.54 acres in 2 lots. It is 2 lots, correct? Okay, any questions on those? And then just one second reading, 23-2025, the salary ordinance. Councilman Cobb, we need to amend that, right?
Do we need to do further amendments?
Looky here.
This is the red lined copy for you guys of what's in the packet. Mayor.
I've seen it. I mean, if there's an extra, I'll take it.
Yep.
So a couple of cross-offs and then some additions. And I guess you'll notice what's not on here is council salaries, mayor's salary. Anything else?
What, that are not in there?
Yeah.
Those are the ones that.
Okay. And just for people listening,
They're in there.
I saw somebody
It's
try to get
changes.
cued on Facebook about, oh, and they're giving themselves a raise. Let me make this clear. All of these recommendations came from help me. Archer, yeah. And along with council, even though we're not tackling council or the mayor, these were not, council generated recommendations. Councilwoman Larson.
Counselor Cobb, when we were in your last administrative services meeting, we talked about the police chief.
Yes.
How does that get suggested?
That has been done by some separate drafted legislation that I've sent to the law department to take a
Those
look
are-
at.
We're
And
gonna,
it will tie into this salary schedule.
okay.
But it is separate.
It is separate. I'm proposing to add some additional sections to the ordinance of the, for the Public Safety Department.
Thanks.
Wait, is this, that's gonna be an amendment to this?
No,
Okay, got it.
completely separate.
Got it, go ahead.
Did you have a question about this?
Yeah, well, I had a question about what Councilman Cobb just responded to from Larson. Do you anticipate looking at any other pay compression issues other than in fire and police?
And I
know you
also
looked at
reached out to the Public Works Director.
I mean, in other circumstances within that.
I'm not aware of anyone else that is impacted because of bargaining unit salaries. If there is, I'm certainly,
No, not bargaining unit, just sort of pay compression generally. So supervisors, managers, directors, assistant directors, sort of that pay compression issue.
if they're members of the bargaining unit, I'm assuming that gets covered by the contracts. If they're not members of the bargaining unit, then that is a matter of salary discretion by the mayor, I would
Well, no, I
assume.
mean, salary discretion obviously is in the hands of the council.
Well, in terms of you're setting within the limits of this ordinance, you're determining what salaries people make. So you determine whether someone comes in at X salary or not. And if salary adjustments need to be made, I think that's within, your purview to the extent that you require some legislation from council. We would certainly be open to doing that.
And can I ask, just for, who is it that authored these amendments?
This was through your
Well,
committee.
this was through my committee.
Okay, but somebody's got to have their name on it. Does everybody on the committee have their name on it?
No, if we want to put,
So you're
Oh, yeah,
talking
it's
about
got
removing the
mayor's-
mayor's name and then putting the
I'm
committee's?
glad to be the sponsor.
No, this is an amendment. The amendment needs to be introduced by a person, it's not anonymous. A person or a group of people.
Well, I'm willing to take authorship. If all of council wants to join in doing this, then we could have it as all of council. I think we discussed all of council previously was on board with these recommendations and changes, so why don't we have it all of council?
Objections, go ahead.
No one.
This is going back to two things.
Oh.
I'll start with the chief first because my other question involves us. I don't recall, did we talk about whether or not, and I know we were in a general agreement about making him whole, or we're still good with that? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was set with that. And then the other question was, I know there was a conversation around making sure that we got some type of public feedback or so around these salaries. Do we have any other thoughts about what we want to do about that? Because I've seen multiple Facebook posts as well have been assuring people this is something we want to get feedback for and they'll be allowed to speak on. But I didn't know what form we thought that should take, or if it's an administrative hearing or something like that, or what that may look like. But
Well, I mean, it came out of committee, so I kind of, 2 readings with.
We did a first,
Go ahead.
we did a first reading on it. I assume that if anyone wanted to come forward
from the public.
community, that they could come and speak to it.
No, I meant not this, the mayor and council. No, the mayor.
Oh.
The mayor and council, yeah, how we wanted to
We were
approach
supposed to
that,
do
I'm
that
sorry.
with public hearing.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, and we certainly, I haven't gone personally down that road yet, but that would be fine with me.
I just wasn't sure what shape it was looking, because since folks were asking, you were right, I didn't know if it was an administrative series, like a public hearing, or if
I
we're
don't
just
think we
doing feedback
discussed-
on a council meeting. I didn't know. I just wanted to make sure that obviously they've got that feedback and we've got this conversation, but I didn't know what it would look
No,
like.
we knew we needed to separate it out. And,
Yeah.
and-
That's as far as we will. Clearly, we'll let the public know if we're going to raise some salaries, what we're doing.
Yeah.
And an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, I think that's what Anthony had brought up at the last meeting, that we all agreed that public hearing would be sufficient.
Remind me about the amendment. All right, and then the rest, I'm not gonna read them, but the rest are the consent agenda. Anybody wants to?
I still have, okay, so,
You still have.
yes, I want, 23. About the, cost of living, there's no percentage in here.
So that's because it changes.
How will the percentage be, what will the percentage be and how will it be implemented?
Would you like for me to?
Yeah.
Okay, so normally when we do a cost of living increase for non-bargaining unit employees, we determine a percentage level that we will be increasing the salaries with. And then we look at the rates and we shift them. Let's say it's 3% by example. We shift them up 3%. In this case though, this is in response to a salary study that we commissioned that changes in a more complicated way the ranges that we are offering for the positions in our classification. And so sort of that 3% or 4% or 2% or 2.5% or whatever doesn't really apply here because this is a larger and more complicated overhaul of the classifications and the salary schedules in a more holistic way. We're not just doing the simple thing that we've done over and over again year after year, where we choose a COLA and we shift the pay scales 3%, let's say. This is a little bit more expansive than that. So,
Thank you. All right, any questions on the consent agenda? 6 or 7, please. All right, good. So next on the agenda is a potential outside human resources consultant. We talked about this at the last meeting 2 weeks ago. On April 7th, it was the consensus of this council that we should have a consultant come in to do a climate study here, and I have come up with one person that could possibly fill the bill. Was there anybody else who talked to anybody?
I've talked to one HR consulting firm as well.
Okay. Did anybody else speak with anybody that could possibly be? Okay. So what I'd like to do is, have Councilman Cobb interview both people and make a recommendation to council. Yeah.
I think part of the process needs to be a scope of work that gets developed, call it a proposal from these HR firms. And you're gonna need a scope of work. It's gonna need to get put into any kind of legislation that we'd wanna agree to. But part of the issue is, we know we have a problem. We don't necessarily know how to solve a problem, which we're going out to some experts to try to help us figure it out.
Right. Well, I would, I'd leave it to Cobb to do that, if that's okay.
just as an aside here, Councilman, I think I got to push back on the premise a little bit. Any workplace has problems, generally. But the councilman's comment, we know we have a problem, I think at once overstates and understates the complexity of a workplace with 450 employees. And so I just want to take a moment and say that if you are going to do anything related to an investigation or a study or any research that you're going to do, I would caution the council not to come into it with, we know we have a problem.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing, if you do that, is you are stacking the deck at the outset and determining that there is a problem, and then this consultant that you hire is hired to find it, and they will for you.
Understood, yeah.
I just wanted to also say that, it's a little out of the ordinary for the legislative authority under charter provisions like Cleveland Heights is to be engaging an HR or employment consultant, because under the charter, that entire realm is within the control of the mayor. So I don't think that that means that council cannot engage somebody, but I do think that it means that it will be important to ensure that any scope of work is consistent with council's authority under the charter and the ordinances. It
Yeah,
doesn't, intrude on the mayor's authority under the charter.
And I agree with that, and one of, my notes here, I just didn't get that far yet, were that I intend to speak with the mayor about this tomorrow at our leadership meeting, because I think we should, as much as we can, do this together. So anybody, I just want to get just a general consensus here. Are we okay with Councilman Cobb doing the interviews and the scope of work?
Yes.
Any objection to that?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Just to be clear,
President.
my objection is to the course that we're taking, not specifically that, but
Okay.
in general.
got it.
Thank you.
Noted. So committee reports, council legislation. We could do committee reports, obviously, when we're in the regular meeting. Is there any legislative ideas, anything that anybody wanted to put forward? Yeah.
I'd like to bring up tonight legislation to push back on First Energy's attempt to raise rates. We've got some draft proposals from what we've seen other cities do. Addie's done one. I'd want to make sure before we introduce something like this, it wouldn't impact any of the work that we're doing with Lombardo. So I would ask the administration to come back and give us some thoughts on that matter. Because if it's gonna cause some trouble getting streetlights, I'm not sure we won't step into this battle.
I'm not sure that we would be able to give you any concrete information as to whether or not you doing that would have that impact.
Are we currently negotiating with First Energy for anything, or is this Lepardo negotiating on our behalf?
Leopardo is working with First Energy, but whether or not the decision makers at First Energy feel a particular way about a statement that Cleveland Heights City Council makes and how that impact their negotiation, I could not possibly tell you.
So you're talking about a resolution.
A resolution, pretty simple. We don't like the increase, because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I'm always okay with any council person wanting to do a resolution. Yes.
So I'm sorry, Councilman, did you say that the clerk has already prepared some draft legislation?
And I've got some draft, yes.
The law department can look at that and can, as the mayor said, maybe we can provide some, insider commentary, maybe not. But my guess is that a utility the size and in the business that First Energy is in is not going to be surprised if there are statements in opposition to proposed increases.
I'll provide that to them.
All right, very good. The last item is,
Just to update you guys, I know I told you guys that I was working on legislation for smoke shops and regulations. Met with a couple of more, so I'm putting that together. I'm going to send that over to the law department so I can introduce that. Just wanted you guys.
I'm glad you said that here, because if there were any objections, we always want to hear that.
And I have a resolution around some social security to protect that. So Eddie is working with me with that, so I should be happy.
As they say in Congress, without objection.
Question for Councilor Cobb. I was expecting to see an appointment to the Transportation Mobility Committee, legislation for that.
I was expecting to see some appointments as well.
The other-
We had so much legislation this time
Okay.
around, so next.
So you still have it?
Yes.
So you can add that to the list I emailed you. Go ahead.
And I don't know who was on the email, but we do have an opening now. Parks and Rec Board, Peggy Spaeth resigned.
Yes, yeah.
You know what, I did see that.
And so,
And was that sent to everybody?
It was sent to Cobb, I know.
yeah, I was.
I got it.
Okay, I didn't know who else was on there.
Yeah, can we just talk tomorrow about the current vacancies that we now
Yes.
see ourselves having again?
There's also financial assistance for the school districts, PTAs. Is the PTAs looking for, is that your issues? Nope. Okay, there's
Yeah,
we're gonna hear it tonight
right.
about some legislation that hopefully we can get going to provide some financial assistance, which we've done for like the Happy Run
The Tiger 5K.
But that wasn't,
and 5K.
but I'm asking, was that part of the list of council-initiated budget adjustments? I don't believe it was.
Yeah, it was part of the description.
We didn't have I thought we had a conversation
We did.
specifically about this.
It would, yeah, so the idea was to put this under a council discretionary account item.
Oh, right.
Line item, so that we could pull from that, not have to do a budget adjustment every single
Right.
time.
Uh-huh.
Council wanted to do one of these races or
Okay.
music hop or whatever.
Is that what we
else
just
you
left
guys-
off with it?
Well, are you proposing that why don't you just propose that we do it and then we'll make sure we,
Let's just do that.
okay. Because if it wasn't, it needs to be brought up in committee of the whole for the law department to move forward with it.
Or a committee.
Well, yeah, but we're here, so it's,
For the race,
For the race.
I asked for
Yeah.
legislation
You
to be
did.
done
I
on the
thought so. That's what, okay.
Okay.
and I think Addie has got that drafted.
Yep, it just requires a budget adjustment.
so we know
So
what to do
there's-
now,
yes,
so we're.
But just for my clarity, you said there were two things, right?
thought
It was
you said
just one, it was just,
Oh, I thought
it was
The Tiger 5K is put on by the PTA,
Yes.
sorry,
Oh, okay. I know. I thought you said there were two
Well,
things.
there were more than one item that would come through.
out of that.
Heights Tiger 5K.
Yeah, out of that fund.
The fun run and the Happy 5K were on the list.
And
music
the,
Music
music
hop.
hop.
Yeah.
So, there were, okay, very good. Glad that we collectively remembered this. Then lastly, so charter review, this is all we need to say. Okay, so we had one item that we discussed, what day was it last week?
Wednesday.
Wednesday last week, that was unresolved, and it was whether or not we wanted to put ranked choice voting on the ballot as a separate item. And you were the only one not there, and your vote would have been consequential.
Not vote,
There were no.
Sorry.
there's no votes.
I meant recommendation.
But I definitely want to put it to the voters. I'm open to that.
Okay, so that's on the record now.
And what, let's see, we didn't vote, but did we come to some type of, weren't we gonna have a further discussion around, the law director and human resources and,
Yes,
Okay.
but we're not gonna
Fire.
we're not gonna do that now.
no, I'm
But-
just saying that was something that was
Yes.
still open.
That was
Okay,
open.
all right.
And we may revisit that, absolutely. But that wasn't an item that had, like, one vote could have made it go, one way or the other.
Not vote.
That's one recommendation, so. Okay,
Well, in that regard, I mean, I think what you're getting at is for any charter amendment to be proposed by council for the residents to vote on, it takes 5 votes.
yeah. So kind of like if there weren't 5 people even supporting to recommend it, then, what's the point, right? And by the way, we can change our minds about everything between now and when we actually vote on the legislation. I'm not saying we will, but, it's, so where we're at right now is the law director has like a bunch of stuff we talked about. Let's just call it a bunch of stuff. And hopefully you can get busy on that right away and then give us something in June. That's what we're,
So everything else is on hold, is that what you're saying?
no, you're gonna have to multitask evidently.
All right, I'll figure that out.
I think you already do though.
Thank you.
And then under other, I just want to say that Director Zampt is going to be reporting on current ARPA fund status on May 5th, right here in this committee of the whole. And we're so looking forward to that, Director, because there's a lot of stuff that we definitely would like to know the status of. And if
And that does include the programs that are gonna be rolling out, right?
does it include the
Exterior
programs?
repair and down payment assistance
We're
and,
gonna give you updates on all.
thank you.
Everything you ever wanted to know about where we're at. And Brian,
Don't forget the business application.
Thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the order? All right, this meeting is adjourned at 7:37.